Right, people, thank you very much. This meeting will be recorded, and subject to the recording being of suitable quality, will be made available to the Council's YouTube channel via a link on the Council's website. Health and safety, the emergency exits from the sub-room into the rear of the room and the front entrance. And if we do need to evacuate the building, please assemble outside by the playground. This is a extraordinary council meeting at the end of a long day, so we'll try to make it swift, but please do encourage you for active participation and discussion. Councillor Fox, would you read the affirmation, please?
We pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skill, wisdom and judgment throughout discussions and deliberations ahead of us today in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the South Wairarapa at large. We commit individually and as a council to the principles of integrity and respect, to upholding the vision and values we have adopted in our long-term plan strategic document in order to energise, unify and enrich our district.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Just 1 second. Apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Hay and Councillor Maynard. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Jepson. Councillor Vickery, will you move to accept the apologies?
I move to accept the apologies.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Councillor West. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. You may notice that I do not have my gavel today. I think it's been recycled. 82, are there any conflicts of interest? No. Public participation, we have no public participation. So extraordinary business, there's one item of extraordinary business. I do apologise for the late nature of this. It's regarding remits on Friday is the LGNZ AGM, which is now being held by Zoom. And I felt that this, I have distributed, I think, all those remits to all councillors. As there's only one person voting on this, I'd like the permission to vote on your behalf. And also, I will take into account any email comments that I've already received or may receive before Friday. It's pretty hard to say the way to vote until we've heard the discussion that will occur during the meeting and the proposals and discussions around that. So I will report back to you on what voting was, how the voting went, and my rationale for doing so. So do we have, so my recommendation is that we consider the report from myself on LGNZ remits delegations. Do we have a mover for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Frimmer. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Colenso. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Thank you, the motion is carried. On to item D, decision reports for the Chief Executive. We're now considering report B1, the Three Water Services Reform Memorandum of Understanding with the Crown. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Councillor M, seconder. Thank you very much, Councillor Becker. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. So, Mr. Wilson, would you like to, or yourself, or anyone in the room, like to say anything regarding the water reforms and the paper we are considering before we consider the recommendation?
Okay, so just a bit of context. So the government is proposing a series of water reforms, which includes the establishment of a water regulator. The government has a number of policy objectives they want to achieve, the largest of which is risk of failure to meet safe drinking water standards with consequences for public health, the environment and economy. This is predominantly around water supply and wastewater. Currently, the indication is that stormwater and flood protection is out of scope, but that decision hasn't formally been made. It's simply an indication at this point. The water reforms have three phases. One is a cooperative incentivises a carrot and stick approach essentially. The first part is around incentivising regions to work together to find a cooperative balance between local decision making and a regional view of how water could be managed in a sense. The first tranche of the funding is actually designed to support economic recovery. So it's very focused not on what is the right thing to do in the short term to invest on, but what are those things that would create employment. So it's a fiscal stimulus package. The government has $761 million worth of funding available. 61 million of that has been taken off the top to support the water regulator, and 20 million has been taken off to support local supplies, particularly Marae. We haven't seen any visibility of how the application for Marae funding is dispersed, but we'll get more detail on that right now. So I just want to reiterate that the first tranche is an opt-in program. There are no strings attached. Local government New Zealand, Solomon, everyone has been over it. I've probably had more emails on this than anything else in the last 4 weeks. A number of our councillors attended the session. We'll be able to inquire and ask questions here directly from Alan Cragnell particularly, who's the DIA, Department of General Affairs individual, who's been talking to local government, 14 meetings across the country, and this was the second to last one. This one was the last one. So what's on the table is the start of a process. The government has made available 2 levels of funding in the first tranche. One is a portion based on a funding formula which is around 75% population and 25% land. We're very glad they brought the land value in because it acts directly to equalise some of the funding for the rural areas, and they deliberately did that way. So cumulatively, we had an nominal allocation of 1.42 million. That is doubled because 50% of the total allocation was taken into a regional pool. Right? So there's actually $2.8 million that's normally allocated to the South Wairarapa district. Of course, we're in partnership with Wellington Water, and that will be actioned through a delivery plan, which Ian will comment on in his part of the presentation. So the key thing here is the tranche 1 is about stimulating investment and as much employment as we can. It's a fiscal stimulus package, but it's also a stimulus to get regions to sign up to how they will work together to approach tranche 2, which is where the government is very definitely looking at creating water management entities on some degree of scale that will take over and look after management from councils, which actually includes the option of asset movement as well. So I'm going to detail of that. This is the signing up for stage 1, most important, does not commit you to stage 2. That's the most important thing. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Ewan and Ian to walk you through the papers.
Thank you. I probably don't have too much more to add other than that Harry has already outlined. But just to say that the MOU and the funding agreement are required to be signed by the end of the month, should Council desire to proceed. Just to note Appendix C, which outlines the legal advice that proceeding on this would not trigger any requirement for consultation. In terms of delivery plan, we have had a number of discussions with Wellington Water on that and have a focus on bringing forward some renewals work across the network, improving some of our asset condition knowledge and data that we have around it, and doing a pilot program around fixing some of the water supply pipes in a particular town to demonstrate some progress around resolving some of those leakage issues which Council knows about. Ian, have you got anything to add?
We've also got some additional money in there for, we've had a short, we've been pretty tight on our OPEX budgets when it comes to maintaining the network. So, we've allocated some money in there for some plan, to get ahead with some better plan maintenance, but also, we've had a bit of a shortfall over the last 10 months or whatever, and around the number of requests coming in, and they've been increasing, so we've allowed some money in there as well to help council with that.
Yeah, and the final line is around potentially allocating some work to rectifying the Bourbush situation for the Featherstone water supply.
Councillor.
Just a general question. What if once we've signed, is there any room to move within the delivery plan which we're signing off today, or is it in concrete now until July next year?
As I understand it, we are trying to allow ourselves as much flexibility as possible. So, when we're putting our final delivery plan into crane infrastructure, we will have some bands to allow us flexibility within those. So, if we need to tweak things across the work streams, we can. Does that make sense? Yeah. We've also probably got a little bit of flexibility with our annual plan as well, because obviously this is helping us get ahead on a lot of things. So, it probably gives us a bit more scope there. I would say though, with it being government money, there's going to be quite a bit of reporting and scrutiny on, they've got the crane infrastructure, but make sure that we're spending the money wisely, so we have to make sure that we do that.
I think also note that we're not actually moving to adopt the proposed plan by Wellington Water, it's merely the signing of the MOU today.
And the funding agreement, yeah.
And the funding agreement. So the actual application of the
So this is not on the table. Okay, sorry.
If you read the
So the
6.
Yeah, the detail of the delivery plan, I believe, isn't required until the end of September. However, as indicated, the Assets and Services, we're keen to progress that as soon as we can to secure the money and secure the work so it can be done in time.
There is a sunset on the amount when the money has to be spent by. I mean, that's why you point this indication about fiscal stimulus. So the government wants the works to commence. There are also, for those who weren't at the briefing, there are very strong tags about what we couldn't spend money on. So you were not allowed to spend money on existing projects, works that you had already got in the pipeline or committed funding to. So this is essentially about bringing forward something that you will be doing in the future and bringing it forward to progress. So there's many tags on what you couldn't spend the money on as there are about what you can.
I think it has to be all spent by the 31st of March 2022, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've also got to weigh out with the plan for Wellington Water on the ability to get that work undertaken, given their resources and the capability within Wellington Water. So, there's a bit to work through with that, and I'm sure that'll come through to our next council meeting.
Exactly, yeah. Equally, in the discussion, we've talked with Wellington Water about the capability of the industry to be able to pick up the work that's half of all of New Zealand is going to be going to market for some types of work. So there's a limited work pool around some of these things. So we've taken those things into balance and the phasing of the delivery plan as well. Yeah.
No, I think it's just really important for those who didn't attend the meeting is that we did discuss at length what this meant, and one of the concepts that was out there was it possibly provided the ability for government to set up these water management entities and then go sell them. So that was expressed, and I think it needs to be acknowledged, and we did actually discuss that.
And, and certainly there's still a lot of water to further go on this one with regards to how the steering committee comes up with a firm proposal for tranche 2 going forward. And certainly, if we take the meeting that we went to as part of the consultation process, there's certainly questions regarding consultation with iwi in this, and certainly areas that need clarification. So if I could just point out that on principles working together on page 11, that it does say that the memorandum is intending to be non-binding, so far it does not give rise to legally enforceable obligations between the parties. And that's our key, that we would be foolish not to accept this, given that it is non-binding, but does encourage us to enter into discussions.
My only question relates to the money needs to be spent by that 2022 date. If work has been started but hasn't been completed, is there still the opportunity to complete that work?
I think that may be under certain discussion with, if you have, but I think our intention is that we have a plan presented to us from Wānaka Water that does have all that work completed within that timeframe.
I'd imagine that if you had a contractual obligation to pay a certain amount, it could be construed as being paid or spent. It's certainly looking at that.
Well, I think we just will go down the straight and narrow on this one and plan to have that spent within the time period.
So it's through you, Mr. Mayor. For Wellington Water, I mean, we're one of what, 5 organisations, council organisations that have got a project. Is there the assurance that you're able to cater for all those 5 customers?
6 actually, but yeah, it's a good question. So we have taken a regional approach with this. So if you take, say, one of the top data renewals, getting ahead of them, you know, we'll be packaging it up as a regional piece of work, and you know, we're developing quite an efficient model to deliver that. So, in my view, it will probably help that we got a big piece of work that would be attractive to our suppliers, you know.
And I think it's probably also worth noting that the Wellington Water's service delivery model has quite well-defined capacity around panels in place for consulting for contractors, and also, of course, the Network Maintenance Alliance as well. So with a bit of foresight, we were actually able to secure some of that capacity in the market and be able to deliver the programme.
So we've got some suppliers on the hook already, so to speak, with these long-term agreements, and which some other probably water entities in the country might struggle a bit, but that's part of us wanting to get ahead early as well, you know.
I think my concern is that there's like 26 projects on the go already just for the South Wairarapa.
Yeah.
This project, so for the one week's 27.
So the nature of the chief executive is really working with Wellington Water to make sure that the program is one that could be managed through. So the type of work we're trying to do, like pipe renewal, across the whole region, if people were trying to do very different waste to a water supply, that would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
So you're picking something that is common, and so it can be phased. You're using the same capability. So that's the practicality of applying this.
Yeah, because at the moment we always want to do the highest priority thing and get the most out of limited funding. With this, it allows us to actually look at a different model where we know there's a lot of old pipes that need to be replaced, and we want to focus so we can do no regrets replacement of them and do them in a really efficient way and get as many meters done as we can. So it's a slightly different approach to how we currently work, but it'll have that certainty of delivery compared to trying to do the really high priority ones the way we work at the moment. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
So, Pam.
My concern with this is I see in the MOU that once there's an initial payment, once you've organised what projects you're going to do, then there'll be a payment to start that project off. Then after that, you can't claim for that project unless it's on a quarterly basis. So some of those things are going to have to be paid for prior to us getting the money back from the government, and these are large sums of money that we're talking about. So do we have the budgets, and will we have the budgets and things in place to be able to cope with that? Because that will come out of cash on hand to pay for those things out of our reserves till the money comes back to replace reserves. So
as we deal with Wellington Water on that, can you answer that, Katrina? I think with Wellington Water be expending the money and receiving from the government on our behalf.
I understand that as a case, but I'll need to check that with Mark Ford, our CFO. You don't know, Katrina, do you?
Yeah, I'm not sure either, actually. I'm not across that detail whether, I assume that the money will be paid to us as council, and then we will pay Wellington Water.
So the agreement will be between us and DIA, so I'd expect it to come through us, and we'd have to manage the cash flow properly.
Yeah,
But we are talking a maximum of 2.42 billion, that's not 242 billion. So.
No, but it's still a significant amount of money out of our reserves to pay for these things, isn't it? Because this is separate from our LTP, it's separate from any other budgets that we've actually put in place, and so we need to be able to manage that, and I think this should go through FAR to be able to be monitored.
We'll put in place a plan to manage the cash flow, but yes, I can certainly report that to Mark.
Okay, so,
Do we have any further questions? Joanne, yeah? Do we have any further discussion regarding this? I mean, we've had this for a bit, and we've also been to the workshop and everything, so would you like to proceed to resolutions? Case, we'll, I'm going to do 1 and 2 separately, and then 3 to 6, as they are just noted, I'll do them. So do we have a mover that we agree to enter a memorandum of understanding at Appendix A and funding agreement at Appendix B, sign these documents on behalf of the council? Do we have someone move that? Councillor Fox, second Councillor Piller. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, motion is carried. Resolution 2, we resolve to agree to nominate the Chief Executive as the primary point of communication for the purposes of the Memorandum of Understanding and Reform Programme as referred to on page 6 of the Memorandum of Understanding. The mover, Councillor Fox, Councillor Plymouth seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Motion is carried. All those against? I'm now going to take note, item 3, that the legal advice commissioned by the Society of Local Government Managers, Solomon, confirms that the MOU does not contain any explicit triggers for consultation under the LGA Act, and that there are no further consultation requirements on the Council's policies and plans at this initial stage, and that the phase of iwi and Māori engagement in the programme is planned. We also note that the MOU and funding agreement cannot be amended or modified by either party, and to do so would avoid these documents. Item 5, we note that the participation at this initial stage is to be undertaken in good faith, that this is a non-binding approach, and the Council can opt out of the reform process at the end of the term of this agreement. And also note item 6, that the Council has been allocated a total of 2.84 million for funding, which will be received as a grant as soon as practical once the signed MOU and funding agreement are returned to the Department of Internal Affairs and a delivery plan has been finalised and approved. Do someone move that?
Oh, no, I'm not moving that, I'm just asking a question. If the number is numbering moved since the ones in Stella are different.
So it's 2.7.
Okay, so we've already,
Yeah,
we've done the 2 resolutions there, and so that's 2 through 7. No, 4 through 7.
4 to 7.
No.
4 to 7.
Do we have someone move that?
I'll move it.
Councillor West, seconded. Councillor Vickery. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, people, and I declare the meeting closed.
Sorry, Dan, was it this one? You're extraordinary.
Oh, my extraordinary. So we have the scene that close. Very close. So also I'd like then going on to my extraordinary that we received the report from the His Worship Mayor. Yeah. Seconded. Councillor Fox. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, motion is carried. And then also resolved to delegate to the Mayor to vote on the 11 LGNC agreements on behalf of Council. Councillor Plymouth, seconded. Councillor Fox. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. Man closed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, people.
Yeah.
I just wonder. Or is it still recording?